Hey, this is JB from Huffy, and today we're going to be talking about the Huffy Torex UTV. We're going to be doing a tips and tricks for troubleshooting and replacing parts. Alright, first thing we're going to look at is replacing the battery. To do this, it's going to be under the seat, so we're going to push the red button below the seat and the lift up from the bottom and remove. Once we've set our seat out of the way, you'll see the battery right here. You're going to want to make sure it is connected. The connector will match up the colors as well, so the red side will match the red side. You cannot connect this incorrectly. It will not go in backwards. So that is connecting and disconnecting the battery. If you need to pull the battery out, there are 3 red tabs that you're going to twist to remove your battery. And it simply pulls straight up. With the battery out of the way, you can see your control board down at the bottom. If you have your battery and need to put it back in, it goes in exactly the opposite as you removed it. Place it in, turn your 3 red knobs, put your handle down, and reconnect. Once you have your battery in, you can put the seat back in. We're going to start by lining up the back, and then pushing and locking the front end. Make sure that the seat is completely locked into place. If your seat is locked in but the back moves, press the button and try again by putting the back of the seat in first, finding it's kind of niche and locked there, and then pushing the front of it in. So this is going to be a how-to on controller replacement. So if we've sent you a controller, these are the steps that you're going to take to replace it. To gain control to the control module, we've removed the seat. As we did in the first part of the video, we're going to go ahead and remove our battery. And now we can see our control module there in the little spot below the battery. What I'm going to recommend here is you take a camera, grab your phone, take a picture of how all of these wires are connected here and the orientation of each one of the plugs, because we're going to be unplugging those and plugging them into your new control unit. Once you've done that, there are also 2 Phillips head screws on both sides of the controller, right in about the middle area. They're a little difficult to see, but they are down there, so you're going to be removing those as well. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and remove my harnesses here. I'm going to be putting pressure on this side of my wiring harness to remove it. Be really careful with the last one over here, as it is a little bit more delicate. 3 different pieces here, and you're going to try to unplug them all. So there's 1, 2, this 3rd one. All right, and so on these you're going to be pushing right at the top here on each one to remove it. Maybe a little pick or a little flathead screwdriver might help you break those loose. So now that we have those all disconnected, I'm going to move them out of the way just a little bit here, as much as I can. Use my Phillips head screwdriver. And remove these screws. These are number 2s. After that, your control board comes right out. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall my good control board. It's exactly opposite of what we did for removing. So I'm going to get my 2 Phillips head screws. And just a quick tip, if you want, you can kind of get them started just a little bit. Into the plastic housing, and that'll keep you from dropping the screws over and over again, trying to get it into place. So I'm going to align the first one, start screwing it down. Before I get that one tight though, I am going to start the other one. Alright, both of them started. Just going to go ahead and snug them down. Doesn't take a ton of force, just good and snug. Pull up on your controller. Your controller may move around just a little bit. It's mounted to plastic, so there's going to be a little bit of wiggle. Once you have that done, you're going to go ahead and reinstall your plugs. We're going to start with the last one that we unplugged. So the wider one only has one place to go. It's going to go in there. I'm just going to use my thumbnail to make sure that it's clicked in place. You should hear an audible little click. All right, your next one is your 2-pin. Only has one place to go as well. And the last of these small ones is the 3-pin. They've all clicked in. So we're going to go ahead and replug our large connectors in here. One with the blue wires goes in to the side over here. And you're going to notice that your remaining connectors are just a little bit different. You have one that's a little bit fatter at the bottom and one that's a little bit skinnier at the bottom. Just be aware that the one that's a little skinnier will fit into the slot designed for the one that's a little fatter. So make sure you don't put that one in the wrong spot. So the skinnier one is next, and then the fatter one is last. All right, so that wraps up our controller replacement. You're going to go ahead and put your battery back in, get it plugged up, and test to make sure that everything works properly. This is going to be a quick how-to on removing the steering wheel and dash so that you can access the switches on your dash for replacement. You're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver to accomplish this. So the first thing we're going to do is remove our steering wheel. So go ahead and depress the buttons and pull it off. To get the rest of the dash off, we do need to remove this block here. So I'm going to take a Phillips head screwdriver and unscrew this screw here. The nut that's on the other side should stay put. You can put your finger on it if you need to. Once that's completely loose, the nut should move around pretty freely. You may be able to remove it. Then take your screwdriver, just kind of give that hardware a push and pull it out. Put that someplace you're not going to lose it. Pull the steering block off. Next thing you're going to do is remove these 6 Phillips head screws that hold this plastic dash in place. I'm going to start here at the top, removing each one, putting it in a place where I'm not going to lose them. These are screwed into plastic. Using a power tool may cause you to strip something out on accident. These aren't hard to do and do not take very long. Next thing we're going to do is carefully pull the dash forward and off the steering column, and that's going to show us the bottom side of our dash. At this point in time, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and grab a camera or your cell phone and take a picture of the orientation of all the wires on the different switches. Once you've done that, you can replace whichever switch you need to replace by removing the wires from the back of the switch and then pushing the switch forward through the front of the dash. I'm going to be replacing the directional switch as an example. Do use caution when you are removing the fittings from the back of the switches. You don't want to break anything on accident. So give them a wiggle and they should come off. If they don't come off and they're really on there, you can use a pair of needle nose pliers, gripping down towards the bottom and just kind of using those to wiggle back and forth and pulling the connector off of the back of the switch. You do not want to wiggle this way. You just kind of want to wiggle side to side a little bit so that it pulls it off. Wiggling this way could weaken the connector and you may break off a piece of the switch into the electrical connector, and then that'd be very difficult to get apart and then service. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these off. And now you're going to notice that there are pieces of plastic that have been pushed out a bit. You can use a screwdriver. I still have my Phillips handy here. I'm just going to push in on those. All right, now that we have this started, we're going to flip it over and remove it the rest of the way. So now we've removed our switch. So we're going to put the new switch back in. Push it till it clicks. All right, so our switch is back into the dash. We're going to go ahead and install our wires. I'm going to reference my cell phone image that I took earlier and put these back where they need to be. I've hooked my battery back up so I have power again. Push the power button. I have the vehicle in the forward orientation, so I'm just going to tap the gas pedal here with my hand, and the vehicle moves forward. Going to click it into reverse. Vehicle moves reverse. So now I know my switch is working and in the correct orientation. I'm going to go ahead and turn my power back off, disconnect my battery again while I finish this up, and reinstall my dash. This process works the same for the other switches as well. Just make sure that you keep track of the orientation. The power switch may have some hot glue, just kind of keeping it a little bit more secure in place. Power switches tend to get a little bit more abuse, and we just added a little bit of reinforcement there. You can replace the hot glue if you have the means to do so. You don't have to. Let me go ahead and replace the dash here. I'm going to take my Phillips head screws and get all of them started. I'm going to do my best to look through the holes and make sure that I am screwing into the places that the holes need, or the screws need to line up with the holes. And I'm just getting them started to start, and then I'll come through and snug all of them up. Remember, I'm using a hand tool here and not a power tool because I don't want to over tighten and strip out these mounting points. It does mount to plastic. Next thing we're going to do is replace our steering block. So go ahead and slide the block over the steering column. You're going to want the end with the 4 Phillips head screws facing out towards you. So it should be in this orientation. You're also going to notice one side does have a space for the nut to be put into. I usually put that on the top. Makes it a little bit easier. And you're going to go ahead and push that down into place and line up the holes for your hardware. You may need to use a Phillips head screwdriver. I do have a smaller one over here. I'm just going to make sure that everything is lined up. All right, got that first part through there. I'm going to go ahead and replace my nut into the block and get it lined up straight. Push my hardware the rest of the way through. Use my Phillips head screwdriver to tighten that down. And that should get good and snug. No need to over tighten. All right, we're going to grab our steering wheel and put it in place here. I'm going to depress the pins. Go ahead and slide it on. Give it a good click. Give it a pull so it doesn't come off. All right, and we're all set. We've replaced a switch in our dash, put the dash back on, and our steering wheel, and now we're good to go. All right, so next we're going to replace the foot switch in the floorboard of our Torex. This is our accelerator pedal, or our gas pedal if you want to call it a gas pedal. Before we start though, we want to make sure that we are in the off position, our battery has been disconnected, and we're going to make sure that our pedal does depress all the way. Sometimes little sticks, stones, something can get underneath the pedal and actually cause it not to work. So we want to make sure that we can depress it all the way and that there isn't anything in the way before we get started. All right, so we have flipped our Torex up onto its rear end. I'm kind of holding on to it here so it doesn't tip any other direction. If you have someone else handy to hold it for you, that's probably a good idea as well. Don't lean it up against anything that's close to being valuable. So if you're working in the garage, don't lean it up and think it's not going to accidentally tip over and maybe hit your car or something. So make sure that you've got it held up in place or you have someone helping you. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the 4 screws on this plate here to remove it. All right, so I've removed the panel and put the screws in a safe spot. This is where we're going to be working at here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the 2 Phillips head screws that hold our pedal in place. Make sure to put your screws in a safe spot so that you don't lose them. All right, so we got our Phillips head screws out. We're going to go ahead and push in on our tabs here and push our pedal into the tub of the inside. So just get those going there. And they are loose. Pedal's hanging free in there. Next thing we're going to do is follow the wires up to the connector. So you will need to take a few things loose. So I'm going to grab a Phillips head screwdriver and loosen and free that wire. And then I'm going to follow it the rest of the way up into the undercarriage. There's a zip tie that's holding some wires together here. I'm just going to go ahead and snip it loose. I'll replace it with a tie or tape later. Continue following up in here. I have another one here on this piece of the harness. Just snip that there. I'm going to make sure that I don't get my cutters way in there. I don't want to cut anything that I'm not wanting to cut, just the zip tie. Follow my harness the rest of the way up in here. And I've found my connector that I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that. Feed that back out. I'm going to reach into the tub here and pull out my bad pedal. I'm going to grab my new pedal, feed the wire through the hole in the bottom of the tub, pull my wire back around. I'm going to go inside of the red bar of the metal chassis there, reconnect to the chassis harness. I'm going to grab myself a zip tie. You can also use tape or some Velcro banding or even a bread tie if you really wanted to. Get my wire bunch there. and snug those up. Don't have to be super tight, just keeping them all in place. Using my snips here, make a clean cut. Gonna grab another one and tie my wires to the red chassis. Once again, not crazy tight, just enough to keep it in place and keep it out of the way of anything else that might be moving under there, such as your steering linkage. So I'm going to go ahead and put my pedal back into place. I'm going to put that top part in there and then press that all into place there. Tighten those into place, keeping my pedal in place. Once again, I'm using hand tools, not power tools. I don't want to overpower anything, just want to get it nice and snug. I'm going to put my harness back together here and snug that up into place. That can move around a bit, which is fine. You just want to make sure that the wires are through the loop and held in place. To wrap this up, we're going to go ahead and put our shield back in place. There's 4 Phillips head screws for that. All right, now you're all set. You can go ahead and set the UTV back down on its wheels. You're gonna go ahead and put your battery back in, get it plugged up, and test to make sure that everything works properly. After that, you can put your seat in and have at having fun.